in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. We'll be having a guest topic today by Bola Bichet on the rule of life.
Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you guys. My name is Bola Bichet. I am a licensed therapist, and so this is going to come from a mental health counseling perspective. Okay? So when it comes to the rule of life, it's a central point that keeps us grounded. Okay? As we go about our day, there is sincerity that we have for God and His love and connecting with Him. But unless we have something to carry out that sincerity, that love, it becomes very difficult to connect with Him. And it's not sufficient. And so sincerity by itself is wonderful, but it won't get the job done. And so today we want to talk about what does a rule look like? Outside of our rules, we can have the most sincere faith. We can have prayers that are heartfelt, times of crisis and struggles. But there lacks a certain peace, a certain stability without that. Without this, we feel emotionally exhausted, spiritually stuck, internally fragmented. We become an autopilot, so to speak, and we go with the flow of the seasons, the flow of the needs. I come through a crisis, I have a hard time, there's a struggle in my relationship, there's a struggle at home, I'm drawn to God. We come to points of peace, things subside, okay, I'm good, I can live my life normally. So in therapy, we have three types of clients. We have the visitor, the shopper, and the commitment. A visitor only comes in times of crisis. And once that crisis resolves, you don't see them again until the next crisis. We have the shopper. 1 foot in, they'll come, they'll have a great session, several sessions, but there's never a commitment there. The issue is always circumstances, nothing internal. And so we see these people the longest. What typically can take a year, year and a half, ends up 5 years, 6 years. And then there's the ones that are committed. And that is what our aim and goal will be. Why is sincerity not enough? Love needs structure. I can sincerely love my child. All of us do. But I can still hurt them unintentionally. Over-frustrated, overwhelmed, having issues at work, issues with my partner, issues in life, and they come and they're an inconvenience at a point. We can lose our temper, be upset, lash out, forget how much we truly love them in the moment. We say when it comes to regulation that there's a certain level that the brain gives up. It shuts down. Your prefrontal cortex, the part for emotional regulation, just doesn't work at a certain point. And that is what we call the window of tolerance. Once you go outside of your window of tolerance, it is impossible for somebody to talk logically to you. It is impossible for you to think logically. And so we are mindful that there are outside circumstances, external, that have significant amounts of weights on us. And so sincerity in and of itself, it's wonderful, but it cannot be consistent. For desire to be bred, there needs to be a rhythm and a safety. Faith itself needs structure and form. Outside of that, it is very sporadic, and that actually adds an additional layer of guilt to us. I need God, I come to Him. I'm happy, I don't go to Him. I'm okay. I'm grateful. We call it being grateful, and we move on. The next time I'm upset or down or tired or exhausted, I come back to him again. And so it becomes this habit of a vending machine every time I have a need. Internally, that will cause guilt because I will feel internally like he's a Band-Aid. I'm just using him in times of need. So having sincerity, even when I am in the most heartfelt prayers in the toughest times, it's wonderful. But we need more than just that. So what is a rule of life? It comes from the Greek word trellis. And trellis is a gardening tool that the fathers would use and the monks in the ancient times. And it's this little picture up here. It's used to help vineyards and vines and grapevines grow, specifically vertically, to go up. And so it is a tool that the vineyards lean on and latch onto, and it gives them something to go in tears, to grow. It comes from the fathers, Saint Pachomius in the 4th century, one of the first monks. And he says, why are we here? And what are we doing here? What is my intention in my spiritual journey? What is my intention with God? Is it simply to go to him in times of needs and wants? Or is it to redefine who I am as a person? Because if it's to redefine who I am and it gives me the goal of being with him, then that is much more consuming on a much bigger scale. And so who I want to be is carried out in this rule. Do I have something that is set in place to keep me grounded, to pick me up even in the good times and in the bad? And that's where the rule of life comes in. We say it's a life-giving framework because the more I put it in there, the more intentional I am throughout my day, throughout my evenings, in my relationships, especially in our relationships. The more stability, the more confidence, and the more peace there is. So it's not about productivity. It's not about earning grace. And it's not just for monastics. It is how I can connect with him regularly. I fully and wholeheartedly believe that holiness, love, it's in consistency, not intensity. My consistency to forgive, my consistency to think of the person more than myself. It's in the small gestures. Everybody's looking for a grand gesture. With so many of my clients or patients that come in, they're looking for the hero in their story, the savior, somebody to come, or some event that's going to happen and change everything for them. And as they're looking forward to that, and life is going to be fantastic and everything's going to be perfect, they discount so many moments, small moments, that could accumulate to so much more than those grand gestures. And so I don't believe that a spiritual rule should be built on intensity, on circumstances, external situations, but rather intimate, small moments consistently. Why do we need structure? So one of the areas that's most fascinating to me is the brain and the effects of spiritual practices. And so one of those amazing, absolutely incredible practices that comes into play is prayers. And we know that the effects of prayers now actually change the brain physically, alter the brain's chemistry. It changes the pathways. It reforms the person. There's a little packet I had put together for one of the monks. I was like, can you give me your spiritual practices? Can you give me your canon? What? I was like, can you just give me your canon? So I took his canon And there's like 4 or 5 books that I have like on mental health and the brain and prayer. And I was able to map out for the next year what changes he would have in his identity, his personality, his interactions with others, his beliefs about himself, and the brain chemistry, just based on his spiritual rule. And it comes in 3 parts, 3 phases. The third and final phase, those small little pieces of peace that we have, joy and gratitude when we go and pray. And the third phase becomes a way of life. It becomes permanent. It becomes attributed to the person. That becomes their identity. And so we need structure to foster that, to have a rule of life. Because the more I put that into place, even if I don't see it, it is doing intrinsic work and changes internally. How I carry myself. I was talking with a convert, and one of the things his wife noted, she was like, he doesn't cuss as much. He used to cuss all the time. I was like, oh, that's wonderful. What's going on? And his answer was simple. He's like, every day I've been attending the liturgies weekly. And during the week before work, I go to attend the liturgy. And after hearing that, for 2 hours where I'm in communal prayer, there's a certain peace that I carry with me throughout the day. And just those words didn't seem adequate. What I used to need to say in order to express myself was no longer necessary. Oh, I dropped something on my foot. I stubbed my toe. Think. That's it. Whereas before, this is his environment. This is what he was used to. He works in a shop, and that's what he was used to hearing all around him. But with that consistency, there was change. We say when somebody is wounded through attachment, and they have an attachment issue, where there's relational issues that come up, the only way to heal that is within another relationship. A safe, therapeutic relationship with your significant other. And I don't think it's coincidental God created it that way. No matter what you went through with your upbringing, with your own family, your own past, when you have your person in your life, if they are safe, if they are grounded, all of that can be rewired. And the two literally become one. Same thing. The soul needs safety to prosper, to grow. And that's where the spiritual rule comes into play. Most people are spiritually sincere, but neurologically dysregulated and emotionally fragmented. We pray but sporadically, fast and consistently, and reflect only when things break. So then it's not coincidental that we live in a culture and a society where anxiety is through the roof. Antidepressants are given out like candy. Our prayers are distracted, and we have cycling back and forth. With the brain being plastic, it's the same way for the opposite. If I don't have a spiritual rule or a way of life, and I'm just going with the flow, that is a spiritual rule. That is a rule in and of itself. I am teaching my brain that my connection with God is only at certain times. And then we have things like splitting, where I am one way with a certain group or in a certain place. But then once I leave that, I'm a completely different person. Because I've been telling myself, okay, I am supposed to be acting a certain way, but I'm not fully convinced in my life. And so the brain rewires itself based on repetition, rhythm, environment, and emotions. Without that, without repetition, rhythm, emotion, and environment, you end up with anxiety, dopamine chasing, emotional reactivity, and fragmentation. Can you guys read that? Okay. Not at all. Okay, I'll read it to you. Prayer instruction. It strengthens the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for attention, self-control, long-term thinking, critical thinking, executive functioning, and planning. And so if you have a child and you really want them to succeed as they get older, teach them to pray. Nothing is going to give them more executive functioning than prayer. It calms the amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain. It tells it I'm okay the more I engage in prayer. And in addition, it increases dopamine and serotonin in healthy ways. If you've ever sat with somebody who actually does have a prayer rule and they genuinely enjoy prayer, the minute they start their prayers, something changes. There's a shift in their demeanor, a shift in their attitude, and it's like they are tapping into a different part. Many times I'll have conversations with the monks in the abbey, and then we'll go into prayers together, and I see, right when we start, it's a whole shift. Something is moved with them. This is their way of life. When they start in that prayer, this is home for them. It builds emotional regulation instead of emotional reactivity. It literally strengthens the part of the brain that gives you control over the emotions. It trains the brain to associate peace with God and not just an escape. So going back to the fathers, rather than asking, what do I feel like doing today? They would simply say, what kind of person am I becoming? And that is my spiritual rule. That's what it's geared towards. So their rules govern their sleep, prayer, work, silence, readings, community, and solitude. Everybody's rule is different. Please get with your father of confession to us the specifics. But everybody should be different. If you don't know how you connect with God yet, that's okay. There is an assessment you can take online. It's called the Spiritual Pathways, and it helps you to pick from them. And it can show you which way is more natural for you to connect with. Put that into use. Find ways that are meaningful for you. It doesn't have to be anything exuberant, anything out of the ordinary. One person I was talking to, she was saying she had somebody record a meditation for her. And so on the way to church, she'll listen to that meditation to get her regulated, to clear her mind, to get her ready for whatever it is, liturgy, vespers. I remember one time I was talking with my father of confession, and we were talking about the Agbeya prayers, and then reading the Bible and everything. And the order that I was doing it in, I was reading the Bible and then doing my Agbeya. He goes, how do you do that? What do you mean? He's like, I cannot read my Bible until I've done my Agbeya. And this is my father of confession. I'm like, how come? He's like, by the time I'm done with my prayers, with my Agbeya, I've then been regulated. I've calmed down. My mind is clear. So when I go to read the Bible, I'm absorbing so much more. It's the same idea. I think sometimes we put such a spiritual twist on practical spirituality. And something as simple as connecting with Him becomes a mystery. When I feel grace or God gives me His grace, then I'll be connected to Him. That's not true. Grace is a beautiful thing. That is not the only way to connect with Him. Before you come into a service, before you come into a prayer, clear your mind. Meditate. As you're in the liturgy, dwell on the words. Every time a thought comes into your mind, pause and redirect. That will get you connection. Every time you detach from the world, every time you detach from your obligations, your stressors, you are going to attach to him instead. And so make it a practice as I'm approaching church, as I'm coming to church, to do my best to detach from everything else. The world is not going anywhere. Your problems are not going anywhere. Our struggles are not going anywhere. When we leave the church doors, they're going to be there. While we're here, try to detach for your own sake, to have some of that regulation. So I told you guys that in relationships you can heal, right? Same thing for group prayers, communal prayers. I don't know of any other time, at least in my week, where I can be in a room full of dozens of strangers, and I know we're all focused on the same thing and going for the same thing and offering the same prayers. And it's completely safe for me to just be present. Take advantage of that in a very mindful way. So what does the spiritual rule look like? Daily prayer rhythm. As you get into your daily prayers, within a few months, it should take 2 months, according to Neuro, your brain starts to rewire. 12 minutes of prayer a day is what they say. And all of a sudden, you're going to have less and less desires for dopamine chasing, for the busyness, for whatever it is. As you progress and you continue on, different things have different tastes to them. And things that are more in depth and have more weight to them become a lot more appealing. Because your executive functioning and your prefrontal cortex is coming on. And the problem with the prefrontal cortex is not happy with just dopamine chasing. It actually thinks long term. What is my life going to look like down the road? What is it going to look like when I have a family? What is it going to look like when I have kids? What is it going to look like when those kids are in a certain point? What does my life look like now? Sleep is another big one. I think we neglect our own needs significantly and self-care. If I'm not giving myself rest, I don't give space for God to heal. Exhaustion in and of itself distorts discernment. Next is work. As I'm at work, am I one other person? Am I a different person than when I'm around others at church? Am I happy? If somebody were to come and ask me about my joy, about my relationship with Christ, how would that feel? Would that be triggering? Would that make me avoidant? One thing one of my spiritual fathers was really nice about, he was like, during my lunchtime, I take 15 minutes to go walking, and I'll say a small psalm and just repeat it for 15 minutes during my lunch break. I come back, I feel much better and grounded for the rest of the day. What does my spiritual rule look like when I'm not in my prayer room? Silence. If I'm constantly in a busyness, I won't be able to hear God's voice. It's impossible. But the issue with silence is so many of us fear it. We're so dysregulated and chasing dopamine that something like silence is actually scary. You get in an elevator and there's other people in there. The tension can be felt, the awkwardness. Well, if I don't have stillness in my own personal life, why would I have it anywhere else? And then last is community. Worship regulates us together. Putting a rule for that. It doesn't have to be a specific church community, but what am I giving back to my community? There's a nice TED Talk, How to Be Depressed, is the title of the talk. It was like the number one way for you to quickly get depressed. Focus on yourself. Focus only on your needs. Do not give to others. And sit there in a bubble and isolate yourself. That's pretty much our culture. Me, American dream. It's all about me. That is the best way for depression, the quickest way. So the rule of life is about protecting my limits. I know that when I struggle, I need somebody to talk to. I know when things are tough, there is nothing that gives me greater peace than him. But I don't want to just use him every time I need something. It prevents burnout. Those heartfelt prayers at night and those tears, as a regular basis, is a lot more fruitful than extremes. And reduces, of course, shame. Consistency is far greater than intensity. Do short daily prayers. Start out with 30 seconds if you have to. Literally take just one line out of the Bible. Doesn't have to be a whole chapter, just one, and start with that. But do it at the same time and at the same place. Predictability breeds safety. And do it in a way that's faithful. Once you do that long enough, you'll notice your anxiety goes down. Your prayers actually start deepening. And your identity, which is fascinating, that comes in the 6-month mark. Having more confidence in who I am and his image becomes there and grounded. So begin small. I'm going to read this quote to you, and I think that's the last thing I got for you. Therefore, when we intend to establish a school for the Lord's service, do not be daunted immediately by fear and run away from the road that leads to salvation. It is bound to be narrow at the outset, but as we progress in this way of life and in faith, we shall run on the path of God's commandments, our hearts overflowing with the inexpressible delight of love. In no way, shape, or form did anybody say it would be easy. But the fruits are there, if you're willing to capture them and go after them. The last thing actually I will say is looking at the story of Daniel from the Bible. After the Babylonian exile, he was taken from his land. He was taken from his culture. He was put in the finest universities at the time, in the king's court in Babylon. They looked at everything from pagan worldview, history, mathematics, medicine, religion, literature. Everything was taught to him. Learned about myths and magic, sorcery, astrology, all of these things which were banned in Israel and he had never been exposed to before. His professors or teachers were pagan priests, and they taught him in the way of their religion. And it's the way that the Babylonians would assimilate the people. In this way, forget their identity. Instead, he didn't leave his prayer rule as chance or haphazardly. And it's said about him that his faith in what he was doing was so strong. Where do you get that from? If you don't have an environment that is conducive, if you do not have something to support you on a regular basis, you will have to fall back. It's a muscle memory. And so rather than hoping that I've built enough to sustain me, instead we start to implement a rule of life, a spiritual rule. That is all I have for you guys today. God forever, man. I'm a big believer in quality over quantity. And so if you have 5 minutes of prayer where it's heartfelt prayer, and you know you go to sleep after 10, do the 5, fully awake, wholeheartedly. Try to do as much as you can after that. And if you fall asleep, great. Let that be your final thought before you sleep. I mean, what better way to fall asleep than with Christ on your mind? Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you're a human being. I'm a Serbian. Somebody asked him the same question, the Metropolitan for California. And he told him I use my car as my prayer room because he's always traveling as well. And he's like, once I get in, I know this is my cell, my quote unquote cell. It is what I have to offer. And I don't think that it has to be in a specific manner where I have to stop everything. And Bishop Basil, the one for Florida, I remember one of the youth was talking with him, and they're like, this Akbeya thing. So, we can't really comprehend this. It's too much. He's like, simple. Okay. You're going to set an alarm on your phone for whatever the Akbeya's time is supposed to be. When it rings, turn off your alarm and just pray for 60 seconds. What is Akbeya ultimately? It's meant to be a daily reminder to be with God. And so however I achieve that at whatever capacity, there is a certain wisdom with not over extending yourself. And so if I'm benefiting from it in the car or at home or wherever it is, then take advantage of that and make the most out of it. And that's okay. You see it? That's okay. That's okay. And does Abuna usually come out and pray after this, or how's this usually work? Does Abuna usually come out and pray, or do I need to let him know? Okay. I guess you guys are free. Yeah. If you want to, just connect with me after, and I'll give it for you. Yeah. Sure. Where is the thing to close this up and try?